What if everything a person knows about themselves, their name, memories, and personality, turns out to be nothing more than a fleeting illusion? What if the story of their birth and inevitable end is merely part of a grand cosmic misunderstanding? Is it possible that in reality, a person was never born and will never die? While this may sound incredible, it's a thought worth dwelling on. This isn't just a mental puzzle. It's a key that unlocks the door to humanity's true nature, boundless, eternal, and incomprehensible to the rational mind. The idea of unbornness doesn't negate the body or the material world. Instead, it suggests seeing through the illusion of separation, the belief that one is an isolated individual existing in an external universe. A contemporary non-duality researcher once observed, "You are not who you think you are. You are not a person seeking enlightenment. You are the awareness in which everything arises and disappears." Imagine waves breaking on the shore. Each wave appears unique, separate. One rises, another crashes, followed by the next. But upon closer inspection, you'll notice there's no real boundary between the wave and the ocean. Similarly, a person is not a separate wave but the boundless ocean itself. They have no beginning and no end, and there's nothing for them to lose. This isn't just a theory, it's something everyone can see for themselves right now. In the next few minutes, the veil of mystery will begin to lift, allowing us to explore the nature of reality and understand why the concept of self, to which humanity so tightly clings, is the source of all suffering. So let's step beyond conventional thinking and immerse ourselves in the truth. For once this happens, it will become clear that you were never born, and that is the most liberating discovery possible. For a moment, close your eyes and ask yourself, who am I? Your mind will instantly offer many answers. I am a parent, a teacher, an artist. I am one who loves, struggles, dreams. But pause and look deeper. Who is the one uttering these words? Who calls these thoughts mine? This is precisely where the illusion lies. From birth, we are taught to believe in a separate identity, in an I that exists apart from everything else. We are convinced that this I has boundaries, starting with our skin and ending with the external world. We wear this illusion like a badge, reinforcing it with every thought, every feeling, every action. But have you ever truly questioned it? Let's take a closer look. Imagine a cup of water. It's easy to think of the water in the cup as separate from the ocean. But if you pour it back into the sea, where does it go? Is it possible to pinpoint the exact moment it stops being water in a cup and becomes the ocean? The same applies to the I. What you consider yourself to be, a collection of thoughts, memories, and sensations, is like the water in the cup. It appears separate, but in reality, it has always been part of something boundless. At the very core of human existence lies a fundamental misconception: the unwavering belief in the existence of a separate, isolated self. It is this belief that compels people to spend their lives defending, cherishing, and ultimately fearing the loss of this self. In most minds, the thought is deeply ingrained. This is my body, my mind, my life, as if referring to something immutable and eternal. However, if we look at things from a different angle, a natural question arises. Is this truly the case? Simply observe the body, which is in a state of continuous transformation. Skin cells, internal organs, and even brain cells are constantly being renewed and replaced. The body you have today is fundamentally different from what it was 10 years ago. How then can you confidently assert that this self remains unchanged? The realm of thoughts is no less mutable. They are fleeting and elusive, like shadows on a wall. One moment, you experience joy, the next, sorrow. Today, you might sincerely believe in one idea, and tomorrow, completely revise your convictions. If thoughts are in a state of constant fluctuation, how can they serve as a reliable criterion for defining the essence of the self? To delve deeper into this question, consider the example of a thought permeated by fear. Where exactly is this fear located? In the mind? In the body? Or is it merely a fleeting sensation, like a cloud drifting across the sky? The moment you stop identifying with that thought, something remarkable happens. It loses its power and influence. John Wheeler, the renowned theoretical physicist, succinctly and accurately expressed this idea. Who you think you are, this limited, struggling person, is nothing more than a concept, a story you've told yourself based on memories of the past and projections of the future. These words encapsulate a profound truth about the nature of the human self. Your true essence lies beyond this illusory construct. It is akin to the space in a room, which remains unchanged regardless of the objects within it, be it a chair, a table, or even people. All of them come and go, but the space remains untouched and undisturbed. You are this space, the awareness in which all life experiences arise and dissolve. When the veil of the self-illusion begins to dissipate, something truly extraordinary occurs. You stop desperately clinging to stories about who you are. You realize that your true essence is boundless, infinite, and absolutely free from any limitations. The illusion of self is not an enemy to be feared and hated, but merely a misunderstanding, a false perception of who you are. And once you see through this illusion, the world opens before you in an entirely new light, surpassing all your wildest expectations. Therefore, take a deep breath and relax, realizing that you are not just a wave, but the boundless ocean itself. And this realization is merely the starting point on the path to understanding your true nature. For a moment, ask yourself the most important question: who am I really? You might answer that you are a person with a mind, a body, and a set of life experiences. However, if you dig deeper, you'll find that all these definitions are merely superficial labels. Let go of all the roles you play in society and the stories you tell yourself. What remains in the end? Start by analyzing your own thoughts. They are like clouds in the sky, constantly changing their shape and direction, appearing and disappearing without warning. One moment you might be thinking about dinner, and the next, replaying details of yesterday's conversation. But the key question is this: who is the observer of these thoughts? If you can observe a thought, then you cannot be that thought. You are the one observing it from the outside. This profound understanding of your thoughts, this unwavering presence, has accompanied you throughout your entire life. It was there in moments of jubilation, in hours of sorrow, and even in the quiet periods between thought processes. Now, turn your gaze to your own emotional experiences. When anger grips you, you might say, "I am angry." But pause for a moment and look closer. Is anger an inherent part of your identity, or is it merely a current of energy passing through you, like a storm sweeping across the horizon? It reaches its peak for a time, but ultimately subsides. And yet the celestial vault, the space in which the storm unfolds, remains unshaken. You are not the anger. You are the sky itself. And what about your body? It seems so integral to who you are. However, even the body lacks permanence. Cells die and are reborn. Your appearance changes with the years. The body that houses you today is no longer the same one you had as a child. So, can it be the real you? And if you are not your body, not your thoughts, and not your feelings, then who are you really? Let's take a bold step. Let's abandon the search for answers in the mind and turn our attention to awareness itself. Right now, at the moment of perceiving these words, there is a knowing, a presence that is aware of these words, aware of the surroundings, aware of your very existence. This awareness possesses constancy. It does not arise and disappear like thoughts or emotions. It is not subject to aging and change like the body. It simply is here, unchangingly and silently witnessing everything that occurs. However, awareness is not something that can be grasped or held. It is not an object that can be pointed to, saying, "This is me." And yet its presence is undeniable. There is no need for anyone to convince you of its existence. You can feel it here and now as the foundation of your being. Here's another way to understand it. Imagine yourself sitting in a dark room, lit only by a candle flame. The flame illuminates everything around it, but it doesn't need to illuminate itself. It is already radiating light. Similarly, awareness doesn't need to be aware of itself. It simply is. John Wheeler describes this awareness as your true essence, what you have always been and what you will always remain. It is not bound by your thoughts, feelings, or body. It is free, boundless, and omnipresent. But what does this mean for you in practice? It means you don't need to strive for enlightenment or for some future state of being. The awareness you seek is already present here. It is the part of you that has never changed, never suffered, and never been lost. Here's a simple exercise to confirm this for yourself. Take a moment to pay attention to your breathing. Don't try to control it. Just observe. Feel the air entering and leaving. Now shift your attention to the awareness that notices the breath. This awareness takes no action. It doesn't strive for any achievements or transformations. It simply witnesses. And in this revelation, a profound realization is born. You do not merely experience awareness. Awareness itself is experiencing being you. When this understanding becomes crystal clear, the search for your true self concludes. You realize that your authentic self is not something to be found or created. It is what you have always been, your original nature. Therefore, taking a deep breath, you should immerse yourself in this awareness, in this presence, allowing everything else, thoughts, emotions, the roles you play, to recede into the background, like fleeting waves. Your true self is the ocean, boundless and undisturbed. This is the essence of your true self, and once you grasp it, it's impossible to unsee it. What does it mean to say that a person was never born? At first glance, this might seem absurd. After all, everyone has childhood memories, a birth certificate, and photographs capturing their infancy. But what if all of this is merely fragments of a story that does not define your true essence? The idea of unbornness does not deny the physical reality of bodily existence. It calls for seeing through the veil of illusory separation, inviting you to recognize a truth so profound that it challenges established notions of who you are. Belief in birth implies a beginning, a starting point, a moment of an individual's emergence. However, the paradox lies in the fact that your true essence has neither a beginning nor an end. It was not born and cannot die. It is timeless, boundless, and unchanging. Belief in birth traps you in the illusion of a limited, separate self, a self with a history, a name, and a past. But the truth is that you are not your history, but the awareness in which that history unfolds. You are not a fleeting moment in time, but the timeless presence that has always been here, silently observing. To deepen this understanding, you can recall your childhood, when your body was small, your thoughts simple, and your world limited to what you could see and touch. Over time, your body grew, your thoughts became more complex, and your experiences more diverse. But wasn't there something constant throughout all of this? That constant is the awareness that observed everything happening. It was not born with the body and will not disappear with its death. It is like a screen on which a movie unfolds. The images and sounds may change, but the screen itself remains untouched. This is where this understanding becomes truly transformative. Most fears and struggles stem from clinging to the idea of a separate self. A self that was born, a self that will die, a self that can be hurt or lost. But when you realize that this self is merely a concept, an illusion, these fears dissolve. If you were never truly born, how can you truly die? If you were never separate, what can be lost? John Wheeler describes this state as the quintessence of liberation, where one comprehends that their true nature is not confined by the boundaries of time, space, or physical form. One comes to realize that they are the very awareness in which all these transient phenomena arise and disappear. And this awareness, being the authentic essence, is absolutely free, knows no bounds, is not subject to suffering, and has neither a beginning nor an end. To verify this for yourself, simply perform a brief exercise. Focus your attention on the thoughts arising in your mind. Notice how they ebb and flow, like waves on the surface of the ocean. Now turn your attention to the awareness of these thoughts. Does your awareness rise and fall with the thoughts, or does it remain constant, unaffected by their coming and going? By shifting the focus of attention to awareness itself, you begin to grasp the truth. You are neither the story, nor the wave, nor the thought. You are the unchanging presence in which everything manifests. This is the essence of the concept of unbornness. It is not a denial of life, but a recognition of your true nature, which lies beyond the body, mind, and personal history. It is the supreme awareness that liberates you from fear, suffering, and the illusion of separation, allowing you to see the unity of all existence. Take a moment to delve into this state. You were never bound, never limited, and never born. You are the ocean, boundless and infinite, with no beginning and no end. The ego plays a central role in the story a person tells themselves. It constantly whispers, "I am this, I am that." It claims ownership of thoughts, actions, and even a person's worth. But have you ever stopped to question, what exactly is the ego? For most people, the ego feels like the core of their being, like the voice in their head commenting on every moment of life, like the sense of I separate from everything else. However, upon closer inspection, something surprising can be discovered. The ego is not real. To begin, you can perform a simple exercise. Close your eyes and repeat to yourself, I am I. Pay attention to the sensations that arise. Does this feeling seem solid, like an undeniable truth? Or does it simply feel like another thought passing through awareness? This is the secret. The ego exists only as a thought, as a mental construct, a set of ideas about who a person believes themselves to be. It is the sum of memories, beliefs, and desires. But none of these things are constant. They come and go, and yet, you remain. Consider this. If the ego were truly who you are, wouldn't it be constant? However, it is not. One moment you are confident, the next you doubt yourself. One moment you feel successful, the next a failure. The ego changes with every passing thought and emotion, and yet, within every person, there is something that does not change, something that has been with them at every moment of their life, quietly observing everything that happens. This is your true essence, your awareness. John Wheeler offers a profound insight. The ego is just a story, a concept. It's the central part of the narrative we cling to, believing it defines us. But by examining this narrative, you begin to see that it's built on shaky assumptions. Let's delve deeper into this and ask about the ego's location. Does it reside in our body? If so, where exactly is its abode? In the head, the chest, or perhaps the very heart? However, upon closer inspection, we discover that the ego is elusive. It is not a material object that can be touched, held, or fixed in space. Next, let's turn our attention to the mind. Is the ego merely our thoughts? At first glance, such a presumption might seem plausible. But thoughts, as we know, are fleeting. They arise, linger briefly in consciousness, and then disappear without a trace. If our essence were defined by thoughts, then we would cease to exist every time a thought left us. But we continue to exist. This is the paradox. The ego's power stems from our belief in its existence. It is like a shadow, convincing, yet lacking real substance. When we accept the story the ego tells us, we feel insignificant, limited, and cut off from the rest of the world. But when we begin to see the ego for what it truly is, merely a construct, an illusion, all its power crumbles. How then do we break free from the ego's grip? The path begins with awareness. The next time we are gripped by anxiety, anger, or fear, let's not try to suppress these feelings or get rid of them. Instead, let's pause and ask ourselves, who is experiencing these feelings? Perhaps we'll answer, I am. But who is this I? Can we find it? Can we find the one who experiences anxiety, anger, or fear? What we discover may be a profound revelation. The feelings are real, but the I that attributes them to itself is elusive. Here's another way to look at this problem. Imagine we are watching a movie. We become so engrossed in the plot that we forget it's just a film. The ego is like this movie. It seems real because we are deeply involved in what's happening on screen. But when we step back and see it for what it is, we understand that we are not the character on screen, but the one observing what's happening. John Wheeler reminds us that dismantling the myth of the ego does not require titanic efforts or exhausting struggle. It's not about engaging in a fight with the ego or trying to destroy it. It's about seeing its true nature. Once we recognize that the ego is merely a thought, it loses its power over us. Imagine the freedom of living without the constant need to defend or prove your worth, without the burden of carrying your story like a heavy backpack. This is the freedom that comes with the dissolution of the ego illusion. Take a deep breath. In this very moment, let go of the idea that you are a separate I. Rest in the awareness that is always present, always unchanging, always free. This awareness is your true self. It needs no story, no label, no past. It simply is. This is the truth that has been waiting for you all this time. The ego was never real. You were never bound. And now you are free. Imagine for a moment a life without the constant voice in your head that insists, I am this, I am that, I need this, I fear that. Imagine a life where you are no longer confined by the limits of a separate I, where you move through the world with ease, free from the burden of self-doubt, fear, and futile efforts. This is not a utopia, but the authentic essence of human existence. Living without a separate self is not about abandoning your uniqueness or neglecting your responsibilities. Rather, it is about seeing through the veil of egocentrism and realizing that life unfolds naturally, without intrusive control from a separate self. Begin with a simple observation. Have you noticed how much energy is spent defending your self-image? You strive to look a certain way, achieve specific goals, and avoid undesirable outcomes. But what is this self that is so zealously guarded? Upon closer inspection, it turns out to be merely a collection of thoughts, a story that you have believed so deeply it seems like an unshakable reality. But what happens when you detach from this narrative construct? Consider this. At this very moment, as you absorb these words, life is flowing. Your heart is beating, your lungs are filling with air, and your mind is comprehending these concepts. There was no need to consciously initiate these processes. They happen spontaneously. This is the essence of life. When you stop clinging to the illusion of a separate self, actions, thoughts, and emotions arise organically, without the intervention of a central self to manage them. It's like observing a river. The water doesn't need permission to flow. It simply follows its natural course. However, the key realization is this. Even the thought that expresses I am doing this is merely an element of the overall flow. It does not prove the existence of a separate self. It's like a wave asserting its independence from the ocean. It still remains part of the ocean in motion. As an example, consider the process of making a decision. You might hesitate for a long time, believing that the outcome depends solely on your will. But living without a separate self, you come to understand that decisions arise naturally, stemming from the specific situation, without the interference of a controlling ego. It may seem like you are making a choice, but in reality, the choice simply happens. John Wheeler offers a liberating perspective. The idea of I is not necessary for life to function. It's a habit, a mental construct we've been conditioned to rely on. But looking closer, you can realize that life unfolds perfectly well without it. To apply this in practice, that the next time you feel stressed or overwhelmed, pause and ask yourself, who is experiencing this stress? Try to find the I that is supposedly struggling. Can you locate it? Or do you simply discover a cluster of thoughts and sensations arising in the present moment? The moment you realize the absence of a real self at the center of your experience, something astonishing happens. The stress doesn't instantly vanish, but your attachment to it weakens. You come to understand that thoughts and feelings are merely fleeting phenomena. like clouds drifting across the sky. Life, freed from the shackles of a separate self, does not transform into a utopia where all difficulties vanish. Rather, it allows you to face challenges without the burdensome weight of false self-identification. In moments of sadness, you feel its fullness without labeling it as my sadness, and joy is accepted without the ego's selfish desire to hold on to it as mine. Such a state does not lead to alienation or lifelessness. On the contrary, it awakens greater vibrancy and openness. The absence of the ego's incessant chatter allows you to experience life in its authenticity, rather than through the mind's preconceived notions of what it should be. There is another important observation. Letting go of identification with a separate self frees you from the habit of taking everything personally. Imagine a situation involving criticism. Normally, the ego immediately jumps to its defense, creating conflict and tension. However, when you realize the absence of a self that needs defending, criticism loses its sting, becoming an ordinary event, like a leaf falling from a tree. This transition does not require titanic effort. It is a consequence of clear seeing. The closer you look, the clearer you understand that life flows effortlessly when the illusion of control is released. The ego is not the conductor of life's orchestra. It never was. It is like a passenger on a train, unreasonably taking credit for the journey being made. The train continues on its way regardless of its comments. And here is the magnificence. Life without a separate self reveals the interconnectedness of all things. The boundaries between me and you, I and the other, begin to dissolve. You realize that the same awareness that permeates one person permeates everyone and everything. This is the essence of true freedom. Not the freedom to do whatever you please, but liberation from the illusion of separation. Therefore, it is important to take a deep breath and allow these ideas to take root in your consciousness. There is no need to strive for a life without a separate self. It is already happening. Only your awareness of this fact changes. Life is not something that can be controlled. It is what you are. The river flows, the wind blows, and you are the awareness in which it all arises. Life without a separate self is not a goal to be achieved. It is the truth inherent in everyone from the very beginning. It is perfectly natural to experience doubts when confronted with ideas that challenge the fundamental foundations of self-perception. The concept of having no separate self or unbornness can cause anxiety and even seem to contradict personal experience. However, doubts and misconceptions are not obstacles, but opportunities for a clearer vision of the truth. Let's begin by addressing a common question. If there is no separate self, then who is living this life? This is a natural question, as everyone feels their emotions, makes decisions, and possesses memories. Doesn't this indicate the presence of an I at the center of it all? However, upon closer inspection, you can discover that life unfolds naturally, without the need for a central self. Thoughts arise spontaneously, feelings come and go, and actions are performed without deliberate effort. When you attempt to find the I to which all these experiences can be attributed, you find only empty space, a vast and open awareness. Consider an analogy designed to bring clarity to this matter. A whirlpool forming in a river's current. At first glance, it appears to be a distinct entity, separate from the surrounding water mass. However, upon closer examination, it becomes evident that the whirlpool possesses no independent existence. It is merely a dynamic manifestation of the river's own movement. Similarly, the concept of self appears before us as something separate, but in reality, it is merely a fleeting manifestation of the flow of life, temporarily taking shape in the space of awareness. Another common misconception lies in the question, how is it possible to fully exist in the world without a self? This question is rooted in the deeply ingrained belief in the necessity of the ego for normal functioning. However, consider this. Is the ego truly the main conductor of our lives? Did it make our heart beat today? Did it decide every breath? Life unfolds effortlessly, without the insistent need for a controlling self. Decisions are made, actions are performed, but they do not depend on egoistic impulses. Imagine the process of driving a car. Initially, we are focused on every movement. Our hands firmly grip the steering wheel, our feet confidently press the pedals. But over time, through practice and experience, the process becomes natural and automatic. The car moves forward without the need to think about every action. Life flows similarly when we free ourselves from the illusion of control, allowing events to unfold naturally. Another doubt that may arise: if I am merely awareness, does that mean my life is meaningless? This question touches upon the very essence of our conditioning. We are taught from childhood that the meaning of life lies in achievements, in striving to become someone significant, to stand out from the crowd. However, the true meaning of life lies not in what we do or achieve. It stems from the very fact of our existence, from our ability to be. Look at the sun. It does not strive to find meaning. It simply radiates light. And yet, its light makes possible the existence of all life on Earth. Similarly, our awareness, our presence in this world, needs no proof or justification. It is inherently full of meaning, as it is the source of all our experience. Now, let's address a deeper misconception. If there is no self, does that mean I am not important? The ego thrives on a sense of self-importance, on the desire to be noticed and recognized. But when we transcend the ego, we discover that our true nature is not something small and insignificant. It is vast, boundless, and deeply connected to all that exists. John Wheeler beautifully expressed this idea. The idea of a separate I is like a drop of water, imagining it's isolated from the ocean. But when the drop lets go of its boundaries, it doesn't disappear. It becomes the ocean. Letting go of the ego does not diminish us. It reveals our infinite nature, allowing us to realize our inseparable connection to the entire world. Finally, let's address one of the most common fears. If I see through the illusion of the self, will I lose my humanity? There is a fear that without a sense of self, life will become cold, detached, and robotic. But in reality, the opposite happens. When we stop clinging to the ego, we become more open, more compassionate. Without the constant need to protect or defend a separate self, we gain the freedom to connect deeply with other people and with life itself, experiencing genuine empathy and compassion. Imagine the boundless ocean where waves crash loudly against the shore. The observer does not seek to subjugate them to their will, nor attempt to control the elements, but simply admires their wild beauty and untamed energy. Life, freed from the shackles of a separate self, is akin to this contemplation. A complete immersion in the flow of being without clinging, without aversion, without fear, like a dance with life itself. In moments of doubt, instead of pushing them away, embrace them as valuable teachers. Ask yourself, who is experiencing doubt? Who is seeking answers? Try to find the one at the very center of this doubt, and you will discover that there is no one there. Doubt itself, like morning mist, dissipates in the rays of clear awareness. Doubt is not an enemy, but rather a door leading to new horizons. Each time you question the illusion of self, you draw closer to the true understanding of your essence, to awareness that has no beginning and no end, which was never limited and can never be lost. Take a deep breath and allow yourself to dissolve into this knowing. Doubts come and go like clouds in the sky, but you remain unchanged. As we approach the conclusion of this journey of self-discovery, let us return to the fundamental question. Who are you, really? You have meticulously explored your thoughts, feelings, and sensations, questioned established beliefs, the roles you play, and the boundaries you once believed in. And what remains in the end? What remains is something so simple and omnipresent that it is often overlooked. It is the awareness that has always been there, like a faithful companion. It does not need to be created or sought. It is your original nature. This awareness is the ultimate truth of your existence. But it is important to understand that this truth does not call for abandoning life or denying personal experience. It offers to embrace the fullness of life without clinging to the illusory notion of a separate self. It is the ability to observe the waves of joy and sorrow, successes and failures, without identifying with each of them. You are the ocean, boundless, calm, and infinite. This is the magnificence of awareness. No external changes are required to comprehend the truth. You don't need to withdraw from the world or strive for perfection to realize your true nature. The awareness that you are is already whole and perfect, like the sky remaining unchanged despite the storms passing over it. How does this affect your life? It means there is no longer a need to chase meaning or run from fear. There is no need to cling to the past or worry about the future. Life unfolds in the present moment, free from the need to control or resist. Consider this. Freed from the constant burden of the ego, you gain the freedom to live with ease and openness. Relationships become deeper and richer, as there is no longer a need to defend a false identity. Difficulties transform into opportunities, as they no longer threaten a fragile sense of self. And every moment is filled with a living presence, because you are no longer distracted by the mind's endless chatter. John Wheeler aptly notes, "The quest for truth concludes the moment we realize we were never lost." The concept of unbornness is not a negation of life's value, but rather an affirmation of the boundless and timeless essence that forms the foundation of our existence. From the very beginning, we were not confined by boundaries, not alienated from the world, and always possessed an intrinsic wholeness. Take a moment to immerse yourself in this awareness, to feel the peace, serenity, and freedom that flow from a deep knowing of your true nature. This is not an ephemeral feeling that disappears, but an unshakable truth residing at the very core of your being. As you return to the everyday world, it is important to carry this understanding not as an abstract idea, but as a living, pulsating truth. Let it serve as a compass for your actions, soften the fears that haunt you, and strengthen your connections with those around you. It is important to remember, we are not merely people striving for enlightenment. We are enlightenment itself, and this enlightenment is absolutely free. It always has been. I express my gratitude for having journeyed this path together. May this truth continue to unfold in your life, bringing with it clarity, harmony, and liberation from all that is superficial. Your journey is complete, for you were never truly separated from the ultimate goal. You were always home.